My name is Jerry Haas, and I'm kind of coordinating this work. We've been offering these forums now for a couple of years, 2.5 years, and we've not ever had the opportunity to get this particular piece of information to you. So we're just delighted that it's happening today. We are going to be recording this, and we also have Channel 9 with us. So you may see yourselves, or the backs of your head anyway, on Channel 9 sometime in the next week. Never know when it will be released. There's a couple of quick things. Along with this series of forums that we do on a monthly basis, we also have what we call Memory Cafe, which is on the second Thursday of the month. So that will be exactly 1 week from today. Same time, 2 o'clock. And our theme is Spring Fever. So you can do a lot of things with that. We like to have time for fun and socializing. It's for those who are caregivers and those who have dementia, caregiver and dementia. So that's available next week. Also, 4 weeks from today, our May forum. This is not our May forum, by the way, even though it's May 1st. This is our April forum. We had to push back a week, but our May forum is 4 weeks from today. And we will have a speaker from the villas who will be talking about communication with people with dementia. This is a staff person there who works all the time in this area. And so she's going to offer some tips about, when you're talking with a loved one or a friend or a neighbor who has dementia, the best ways to do that. So that should be very helpful. And then in June, for our June forum, we'll have the Alzheimer's Association here with us with some of the latest research that's been going on Alzheimer's, which is very exciting. Some of it's very exciting that things are happening. The other thing is just to ask for your help today after, first of all, one major help you can do is to eat more. The food was brought by The Point. The Point is a facility here in town. It used to be called Prestige, and they have both senior apartments and assisted living and memory care. Julie Hansen used to be their staff person who was assigned, and Julie would come quite often to be with us. Darcy is now the person who is in that role. She wasn't able to stay, but when she called me up and said it would be okay if I come, she said, I'd like to bring some refreshments if you don't have any. And well, we never have had refreshments before. So this is it.
That's nice.
Live up. This may be the last time ever we get refreshments. So just enjoy yourself completely. Finally, tomorrow we have what we call Hope Lunch, which is a lunch open to the community. There's no charge for it. It's a ministry that our church has been doing for maybe 8 years or more, and attracts up to sometimes 120 people. And so this room will need to be transformed after today. So if you are able to help us kind of clear the chairs away, and Chad can direct us, and we'll set up the rest of the things. So those are the announcements for today. I'm just, as I said, really excited about today and having the opportunity to learn about this program. It's something that I've known about, but I've also known just how challenging it is. So Elizabeth Reeves is with us from Pima Council on Aging. And she and the team have put this together, and she's the one that's going to be our presenter today. So here you are.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jerry. I looked at the offerings that your program has coming up, and I'm just really excited to see everything that you've got going on. And I love memory cafes. I love attending them. There's such great spirit and feeling in the memory cafe. So anyway, take advantage of this. I'm sure you all are regular attendees, but if you're not, it's great stuff. Thank you so much for having me today. My colleague Ray and I do this presentation once a month at PCOA in Tucson. And we are both, we're just so enthusiastic about the ALTCS program and wanting people in the community to know that it exists. I started my career as a social worker working for Pima Council on Aging programming. And then I worked for the ALTCS program as a case manager and a manager in that system for about 17 years. Ray also worked in the program, and our colleague Sarah, who sometimes helps us, worked in the program. So we want to get the word out to people. My perspective is, as somebody who worked in the program and somebody who has worked outside of it, thinking about eligibility, but I'm not employed by ALTCS. I'm not so I'm just speaking as an outsider based on observations that we've had about the program and how eligibility works. I also want to say I'm not a lawyer. There are some questions that come up that we will say, you probably need to talk to a lawyer about that. We do have a listing on our resource directory, and our helpline staff can help you get information if you should need to speak with a lawyer who specializes in elder law, and particularly in ALTCS law. There's only a few areas where that's important, but some people have very complicated financial pictures and really need specific advice. So let's just jump into this. Oh, and I guess what I also do want to say is simply that this is a process. I'm going to talk a lot about eligibility today and the eligibility process. And there are, I can switch sides here. Let's try this. Now if I stand here, can you see okay? Okay, perfect. So there are websites. If you search about for ALTCS or for the Arizona Long-Term Care System on the internet, you'll come up with some websites that will say, we'll help you apply for ALTCS. It's really hard. A lot of people get denied, and you should hire us to help you. And what I want to say is that it's free to apply to ALTCS. Everybody in this room can do it. If you've paid your taxes, you can apply for ALTCS. It's a drag, it's a lot of forms, it's figuring financial documentation out, but you can totally do it. And if you run into challenges, our team at PCOA can help. We can talk you through the challenges, and then we can tell you when you really actually do need to speak with a lawyer. So call us, we are free, and we have good experience and good information to share. What I'm going to talk about today is what is the ALTCS program, what it does for folks, the services it provides. I'll talk a lot about eligibility, like I said, both financial eligibility and the medical eligibility and what that looks like. And I will spend some time on some common complications. So there's some situations that we see people run into frequently, and so I'll hit on those complicated situations to give you an idea, because it may affect your picture when you think about ALTCS application. And finally, I will talk about what happens when a person becomes eligible for ALTCS, what services are available, what the intake process is like, and some of the extra benefits that are pretty cool with the program. Oh, and this is why I'm standing over here. I may need to ask you to move if you can't see, okay? Because I need to be able to press the magic button. So first of all, ALTCS stands for the Arizona Long-Term Care System, and it's a mouthful, so we just say ALTCS. ALTCS is part of the ACCESS program. ACCESS is our state's Medicaid program. So Medicare, and then we have Medicaid. And Medicaid in Arizona is called ACCESS, Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System. And it's important to know the connection between ALTCS and ACCESS, because the mail, if you're applying, that you'll receive will have the ACCESS logo on it, and it will say ACCESS, but it will be part of your ALTCS application. When people think of ACCESS, they often think of healthcare for folks who really have no resources and really need the ACCESS program because they don't have Medicare. But ACCESS has a lot of programs and a lot of different eligibility for each program, and the eligibility for ALTCS is quite different than the eligibility for acute regular health care. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Maybe I should ask you to press the buttons.
I'll be happy.
Okay, cool.
I'm pretty good at it.
All right, I bet you got lots of practice. So just as a sort of highlight, ALTCS pays for care for people. It pays for nursing home level care. And so traditionally, long-term, going way back, this was nursing home care for people who really needed care and they didn't have anybody else to provide the assistance. So I keep going a little too loud and a little too soft. So will you let me know back here if I'm, okay. So it's nursing home care is what the program provides, and that's a national program that we received the money for. But Arizona very early on said, look, better health outcomes for people at home, cheaper care for people at home. People want to be at home. And so Arizona was an early adopter, actually a pilot state for care in the home. So a lot of times people, almost half of the people who receive ALTCS assistance live in their own home, either their own home or maybe with a family member. So some sort of situation like that. And then we also provide care, the program also provides care for folks in assisted living centers and adult care homes. So all of the different types of places that people would like to be to receive care. I say must meet medical criteria because sometimes if a person needs really high level of care and they don't have anybody to be with them 24 hours, then they might not actually be able to be at home. Just practically that won't work. And so ALTCS would say, this is what we can do, but actually you may need more, you may need to move. And sometimes people just want to be in a nursing home. They just feel like that's where they're gonna get good care, but their case manager may say, look, you really don't meet medical criteria to be in a nursing home. Let's think about assisted living. So that's the medical criteria piece. Oh, right, thank you, sir. So, eligibility, we're gonna kick into eligibility. To start the process, you just call the number on this slide, and they're gonna ask a few demographic questions, and that will get the process rolling for you. The process typically takes 45 days. Right now, it's taking longer. It's taking up to about 3 months. Part of that is because people are seeing ads, once again, the internet. Ads are saying, hey, look, you can get paid to help your family member. And that is 100% true. If you're on ALTCS, you can get paid to help your family member with care. However, people applying for ALTCS, people who become eligible for ALTCS, need to require a pretty high level of care. And so a lot of people, if I'm helping my mom with shopping and housekeeping and I help her when she's paying her bills, I'm doing a lot of practical help, but that's not the kind of help ALTCS pays for. So people will apply for the program. They have every right to have the entire application process happen, but that slows down the system. And it does just make it take longer. It's also why you'll see statistics on the internet sometimes that say X percentage of people are denied. Well, people are denied because they're just not quite ready. They just don't need that level of care yet. So we'll talk about what that level of care looks like.
Just one suggestion, if you hold the mic down a little bit, I don't think you'll have as much.
Oh, good. Will this work? Sorry, our mic at the office has to be hold it like an ice cream cone. But yeah, I'm much more comfortable if this works. Well, I'm so happy. Cool. So there's three steps for the eligibility process, or 3 parts. There's general eligibility that's really basic. There's financial, and we'll talk about what that looks like for income, so money coming into your pocket each month, and also for assets, so what you have in the bank, what you have saved. And then we'll also talk about the medical eligibility piece. I'm sorry, I'm usually a pace or two, so what are you guys with the cameras? I'm trying to hold still. Okay, so let's see. For the general eligibility is pretty straightforward. You need to be a U.S. citizen or have lived in the United States legally for 5 years, for more than 5 years. You need to have a social security number, and you need to be a resident in the state of Arizona. Pretty basic, pretty great. A nice thing about the resident piece is that to be a resident, you have to have your feet on the ground in Arizona. So you can actually, like, if I live here in Tucson and my mom is in Boston, and I realize, we're talking together and we realize, oh, she'd be better off here in Tucson. That's where we think that she'd get, or if, in Southern Arizona, she'd get good care living close to me. We can start the application process while she's still in another state. Yeah, and then when we get to medical eligibility, she needs to be here for that medical eligibility piece. But, like I said, it can take 3 months, so you can start the process, you can start your planning, and then you can do the move, and the eligibility worker will coordinate the date with you. So that's pretty cool. Our state does some really great things with this program. I actually really think it's a big administration. It's a big, what's the word for it? Anyway, it's a huge program, bureaucracy, right? But it also does a lot of things really well. Okay, this is where Ray and I trade off, and now you're stuck with me the whole entire time because my colleague is not well today. So we're going to talk about financial eligibility. Does anybody have questions so far? Okay, all right. So before I go into this, what I want to say is that for some people, the eligibility process, the financial process is really pretty straightforward. If you have only Social Security as your income and you don't have much money in the bank, you have a savings account and that's it, you own one car, really simple. The financial eligibility process can be pretty quick. But other people have a little more complicated financial pictures. They may have a retirement account and they may have a pension, and it's just a little more complicated. So, we'll talk about the straightforward situation, and then we'll talk about some of the more complicated pictures that people can have. Thank you, yes. All right, so for income, for one person, for one individual applying, the income received each month can't be more than $2,901. And if a person is married and their income is over that $2,901, then the couple's income together needs to be below $5,802. And you can't be over that. Now that's kind of freaky. Yes, ma'am.
Does that change annually?
It does. All of these numbers change annually based on cost of living and cost of nursing homes and that sort of thing. Now, the thing is, we all know nursing homes cost a lot of money. And $2,901 is not enough for a person to pay to be in a nursing home. So if you have $3,000 a month, but you need nursing home care or you need lots of in-home care, that's not enough money. So if you go to the next slide, Jerry, I guess it's 2 slides away. So go to the next slide, please. So what I'm going to say is you can't refuse an entitlement if you're over income. But what you can do, next slide, please, is you can set up an income trust, or sometimes we call it a Miller trust, because the Miller family actually sued and said, hey, wait a minute, our income's over the $2,901 or whatever it was the year they were applying, but we still can't afford nursing home care. So we're in this weird gap. So thanks to the Miller family, we have this great thing, these Miller Trust or income only trust. And what happens is that a person with income over the limit, but under $8,000 a month, can go to a lawyer and set up a trust that then has their income come in, and then they can pay for their expenses. They can pay for their rent or their home care or their groceries or the cost of being at an adult care home. Anything like that, anything to pay for their care comes out of that trust. And that way they receive the care, and they're paying part of the care, but the state is still bearing a huge part of that burden. So they're sharing the cost. When a person dies, the money left in the trust then goes to the state to reimburse for service. But generally, most of the money goes in to the trust and then goes out to pay for care. There's usually not a ton of money left because people need to pay for care. And this is one of those situations I recommend speaking to an attorney about if you find yourself in it. It's a very standard thing, but there aren't a lot of attorneys who do ALTCS Miller trusts. And so we have a list of about 6 in Pima County who can assist with those. This is a good place to say that sort of the overarching philosophy of all of this is that we are all planning for our futures. We are saving, we have saved. We want to make sure that we have money to pay for our care needs as we need more help. But sometimes that money just isn't enough because there's no way to know what you will need, right? And we can't save, excuse me, we can't save everything. And so it's possible to run out of funds. And so that's where the state program is there to help. At the same time, it is the state's expectation, if I can say the state has an expectation, that we will pay as much as we can towards our own care. Like, that's my responsibility to save what I can and to do my best to pay for my care. But if I can't, the state's there to help. And so that's where things like the trust is payable at death to the ACCESS program, to the ALTCS program, that's where that comes in. There's a few other situations where you'll see in this presentation where there's an expectation that I, as a Arizonan, will do my best and I will pay my share, but the state's going to help out. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I have,
Yes.
what does the fourth bullet mean? I don't even understand what that means.
The
Most applicants do not need aid assistance to apply. I don't
Oh,
understand.
that's what, thank you for pointing that out. That's what I was talking about at the very beginning, that most people applying for ALTCS do not need to speak to a lawyer. But if you need a Miller Trust, you definitely should speak to a lawyer. We do not recommend trying to do it on your own because you don't want to mess it up. It'll mess with your eligibility. You have to try it again and again. I've seen people sort of try to do it themselves, and it takes like 7 tries to get it right. So don't trouble yourself with that. All right, let's go to the next.
So
yes, sir.
Are you going to talk about a marriage situation, and if my wife and I make more than that, and then she ends up in needing long-term care, would it just be her estate somehow that would go to the access? I mean, is that something you try to separate out?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in terms of the Miller Trust, exactly. But in terms of the Miller Trust, yeah, it looks at the applicant's funds. And if the couple is over, then it looks at couple's funds, and this sets up the trust for the applicant's care. But there are provisions to try to make sure that the non-applicant member of the couple still has assets and income in their name to pay for their care.
I need to divorce my wife.
Right. We don't want that. And that had to, 30 years ago, that's what had to happen. It was awful.
Right,
so,
right.
yeah. Yes, sir.
What about a non-legal couple living together?
Like non-married couple, the applicant is considered their own individual and not married for the state of the ALTCS application.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did everybody hear that? Yeah. Okay. All right. And these are great questions. I really appreciate them. So please keep them coming as they occur to you. All right. So that's income. Any other income questions? Yes, sir.
What about large bank accounts, savings accounts?
That's what we're going to talk about now. You are on it.
I'll be quiet.
No, you're on it. You're good. So first we were talking about income, money coming into your pocket each month, and now we're going to talk about resources. So that's your savings accounts, your retirement, annuities, all that sort of stuff. So for the resource eligibility, that looks at all the savings that a person might have. A person is allowed to have their own house that does not count. The value of the home up to $730,000. But other investments are counted. The things that don't count, so a person can have a car because you need a car to get to your doctor's appointments and medical transportation, that sort of thing. A burial plot that's paid for doesn't count. A prepaid burial fund that's not refundable doesn't count. A person can have a separate banking account set up for $1,500 for burial. That number has not changed in forever. That's not going to pay for a burial these days, but at one point, I guess it would have. And also life insurance, if you can cash it out, it counts. But if you can't cash it out, then the life insurance doesn't count. And then household goods. Oh, I'm so sorry. I think I can turn that off with my watch. So household goods, you can have a Picasso on your wall. You can have really great tools that you use for your work, all that stuff. None of that's going to count.
I noticed on the value of home, it says in capital letters, if it's not protected.
Oh, thank you. Good
What about all the other
question.
assets and a trust?
Good question. Yeah. If anything that's set up in a trust, not the Miller Trust I was talking about, but a trust that sometimes we set up so that when we die, then it's easy for our family members to take over the assets and manage the money and handle that. Those sorts of trusts, anything that's in a trust does count as a resource. Does, yes. So it basically makes that person ineligible unless they dissolve the trust. Yeah. Once again, it's that idea that we need to use our assets to take care of ourselves. And that's hard because we want to pass on to our families, right? We want to share the resources that we've gathered with our families. But the idea with this program is that you use those assets to care for yourself, and that's what they're there for. Yeah. So the next slide is going to show you the resource limit is $2,000 for an individual. So it really is thinking that you spent your money taking care of yourself, and now this is when you need help from the state to step in. Now, if you're in a couple, it's a little bit different. And we'll look at the situation for two people where one person is applying and the other one is not in just a second. But if both spouses are applying and they also live in a skilled nursing home, not at home, then each applicant keeps $2,000 in there for their resources. If one of those people lives at home, then the community spouse rules I'm going to talk about in the next slide count. And this is where it gets a little interesting. Go ahead and go to the next slide, but I'd love to hear the question. Did somebody say, ready?
I did.
Uh-huh.
You skipped the last bullet on the previous slide.
Okay, yeah, just that if you go over, yeah, you got to be under that 2,000. Now, of course, income goes up and down. I get $2,000. I get $5,000 each month from my income, and then I spend it. So income does go up and down a little bit in a savings account, but if your savings accumulates for more than $2,000, then you're not eligible for that month, and then you would become eligible again if the money was spent.
I'm missing something.
Yes, sir.
$2,000 in countable assets. That means bank accounts. That means
everything. So your retirement savings.
you could only have $2,000 in the bank.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
My question.
So that is, and we'll talk a little bit about spending that money down and how that might work, because it is kind of scary to be heading towards zero and not know if you're eligible. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Yeah. So I think in the next slide, we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about exactly your question, actually. Ray and I move these slides around sometimes, and sometimes I forget what's coming next. Yes?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that this would be for a nursing home or assisted living or family care or any of those type of.
Yes, it provides care at all of those levels. Yeah.
Or at home.
Or at home, exactly. So that's that where you end up receiving your care, where your loved one ends up receiving care, is a family decision. What does the person who's receiving the care, what does their family think is the best choice based on the informal assistance they can receive and the care they can receive from the program? Yeah, the state does not make that decision. The case manager does not make that decision. They'll advise, but it's up to the applicant or the recipient. Now, if you are a single person and you've got your savings, you've got some money, and maybe you're living in an assisted living home and you're paying $6,000 a month to the assisted living home. So every month you're paying, and you're seeing that zero approaching, and you're wondering, like, am I going to be eligible for ALTCS? What you can do is request an assessment called a private pass. And that's essentially the physical assessment that I'm going to go into detail about. But you get that assessment. The ALTCS eligibility worker says, yes, you are physically eligible for the program. And we're looking at your finance, and yes, you would be financially eligible. So it is okay to keep paying for your care. And you can do this assessment as early as you want, but we recommend within 6 months of running out of the money, because the pass is good for 6 months. So you wouldn't have to redo it again when your funds got low. So you would request this pass, and then you'd have the peace of mind knowing, yes, indeed, I do qualify for ALTCS, and I will receive the assistance when it's time. And often people can be in the same assisted living, receive the care from the same home care agency, and just transition into the ALTCS care. I think the next slide now we'll talk about, for a couple. So what happens if you're a couple, you're a married couple, and one member needs ALTCS assistance, but the other one doesn't, and the other one's going to stay in their home and keep doing what they're doing, but we need care for the person who needs assistance. When a couple in that situation applies, the person we call the community spouse wants to make sure that they keep some of the savings that the couple gathered during their life, because they also will want to pay for care or do whatever they want to do in their life. So what happens is that if there's assets, joint assets of $31,584, then the community spouse just keeps that total. There you go, they just keep it. But if the assets are higher than that, then there's a resource assessment. They look at the couple's joint savings and all of the money that they have in the bank, all the money they have saved. They cut that in half, and the community spouse, the person not going into ALTCS, keeps that money. The person who's applying for ALTCS needs to spend their half of the money down, and then when it gets to $2,000, they would be eligible. And I've got a chart that shows what that looks like. But the community spouse can keep up to $157,920. So basically, if a couple's income is $300,000 or lower, then it's good to get that resource assessment. And let's look at the next slide, and I'll show you what that looks like. And you know what I didn't do at the beginning of this was say that in your packet, some people have discovered it and others may not have, there's a copy of the PowerPoint. So if that's convenient for you when you're taking notes, you can pull that out. But what that looks like for the community spouse and the person applying. So we've got this example. We've got a couple number one, their joint resources, their savings is $200,000. So the state looks at that, they theoretically cut it in half, and the community spouse keeps $100,000. The person applying for ALTCS would be able to keep $2,000 at the time that they become eligible. So together for that couple, when they get down to $102,000, the person applying would be eligible. They'd need to spend down $98,000 before the person became eligible. Does that make sense? And you're going to say, what can I spend it down on? And that's honestly the next slide. But let's wait a second. So let's say that couple number one heard about the spend down. They heard, oh gosh, like we can't have all this money. The person who's applying has to have a lower amount of money in their pocket, and they wait. They start spending money on care. Maybe the person who needs help is in an adult care home or getting a lot of care at home, really eligible for the program physically. But they wait, and then they get down to $100,000, and then they apply for ALTCS. Well, then ALTCS divides the income in half. The community spouse keeps $50,000. The person applying keeps the $2,000. The couple's eligibility target is $52,000, so it's less. I see some nods out there. And the couple has to spend down $48,000. So it's in your best interest to, if it seems like the person is medically eligible, and I'll talk about what that looks like in a few minutes, to go ahead and get a resource assessment from ALTCS. And so you can call and actually ask for a resource assessment, and they will help you they'll look at your finances, do that eligibility, and let you know what the spend down target is. And finally, just for the example, couple number three has $26,000 in the bank, and the asset limit is over that. It's $26,078. So they're already under that asset limit, so the person is eligible immediately, and the community spouse keeps the $36,000 that's available. Okay.
Can I just check, is everybody kind of following along with this?
Yeah, it gets complicated. This is the complicated situation that I was talking about at the beginning. So if you have questions, that makes sense.
It sounds like if you're the spouse that doesn't have dementia, you get like really screwed. Like, you know, you save money for your lifetime, and most of it goes to the person that needs care, but eventually you'll need care, and you're like kind of...
Right, that is worrisome, yeah, because the person who needs care first, a lot of the money goes towards providing care for that person, and the other person, the person who's right now healthy, like what happens to them? And yes, it really is the person who, and that's the glass half empty way to look at it, and I think it's completely 100% honest and true. I guess the glass half full way of looking at it as that the person who stays in the community can keep $158,000, and the state will provide all of the care for the person who maybe needs, like you said, maybe dementia level care. So instead of spending all the couple's money and the community spouse not having anything, it does keep a little bit, right? But that's, if you've saved a decent amount, that's not very much, and you worry, okay, what will happen to me, right? Yeah. And I can't soften that blow. That really is the way it is. Pardon?
You can get divorced.
You could. No legal advice here, but I mean, there's all sorts of options. But yeah, it's hard. Yes, sir.
I'm in the predicament here that Debbie's talking about. My wife is at the Villas and has been for 5 months.
Okay.
I maintain our account there through stocks. I mean,
Right.
I call my stockbroker and I say I need $12,000
Right.
to get me by for the next couple months.
Right.
And it just, and I don't know where I come in here.
Right.
And I've asked the question of many people. What about Bob?
Yeah.
What is Bob doing? I mean, we've got a house in Denver that Hazel's son lives in. We've got our house here. I'm maintaining the house. I've got money from Social Security. Hazel's got money from Social Security coming in. I'm sitting there wondering, where the heck do I fit into this? And I don't.
Right.
I don't fit into it. I'll be interested the next meeting that Jerry is talking about, where the people from the place that Hazel is at come in, and maybe I can. I've asked a lot of questions over there. I go there quite often to see my wife, who is an Alzheimer's person, and it is, and none of it to me, to this point, and this doesn't factor into me at all, as far as I can see.
Right, because if you've got substantial savings, then 150. Excuse me. And so I don't know if the question got picked up, but the comment is simply like, what about me if I'm the person who's paying for the care and the caregiver, and my spouse, the care for my spouse is very expensive. What happens to me? And that's a huge worry.
And that is a huge thing for me.
Yeah.
At some point in time, the well runs dry.
Yeah. And if you have a substantial amount of savings, then $158,000, it doesn't, it's a drop in the bucket for what you saved. Right.
I don't know where I fit into what you are talking about.
Right.
I imagine I do, but I don't know. I don't know what role I play.
Yeah, I think that, and this is not gonna feel good, right? But I think perhaps the idea is that the safety net for your wife is there to make sure she gets the level of care she needs, and then you have that amount left, and you've got the house in Denver, right? So you've got some assets, but not a ton. And if you should need care, then the ALTCS program would be there as a backup for you also. And I think that's...
I haven't seen anything that even resembles that to this point.
Okay, yeah.
And
Yeah, it's a really hard picture. And this is...
I'm very, very confused as to what... And my problem is that I'm darn near 90 years old, and I can't, I don't know what comes next.
And I think you and I can talk more one-on-one after, because I think what your questions are important. It's just, but it's a real worry, and I think the bottom line is that this is a safety net, and the state is trying to make the resources spread out. And that you're right, it could have that split higher, or that recess limit for the community spouse higher. That's where it's set. For many people I talk to, they can't even imagine having that much money. And I know people in this room, that seems like only a little fraction of what you've saved. So there's this whole range of people, and the state's trying to come out somewhere in the middle, and it's really hard. And I'm sorry, because I can understand what you're struggling with. Yeah. Yeah.
Not to make you feel any worse, but federal Medicaid is the exact same way.
Yeah.
It's a higher limit. Federal Medicaid is a lot higher, it's substantially
Yeah.
higher. But it's the same thing. Spouses, it's very difficult
Yeah.
to qualify, and you're basically, and you may say, hey, you're married,
Yeah, there's a lot of,
all the assets.
excuse me. Yeah, there's a lot of holes in the system. There really are. You've pointed out one of them.
How long do you
Yeah.
have to be qualified?
I don't know. That's definitely a Mr. Lawyer question or Ms. Lawyer question. Yeah.
It's a reality, and
It is.
The other thing I know is a couple in their 70s who are taking care of her mother.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
So, and that's another scenario, but
Yeah.
and that doesn't qualify as community spouse, so I'm not sure how that's calculated, but I know they have to do a lot of work to get down to the level for her, so she could
Yeah.
access our ALTCS.
Yeah.
But
So
it's not their income and assets to count that, right?
I don't know.
right. Yeah. So if you're a family member taking care of somebody, your income and assets do not count. And so it is important to make sure that you're using their income to pay for their care and their assets to pay for their care, and not depleting your own income and assets because you need them for yourself.
That can become a whole big family part.
It can get complicated. Yeah, it really can. We do have family caregiver support people who can help mediate to some extent, because those conversations are tough.
When does all of this come into play?
So this comes into play in terms of making a person eligible. So the person applying can only have $2,000 for their assets
Okay, those are,
at the time of eligibility.
and who determines that?
The eligibility worker, the intake eligibility worker.
Then they would do a synopsis of your.
Yeah, so as you apply, and maybe I didn't make this clear enough, they're gonna ask for your bank receipt, your bank account information, your last statement, all of that sort of thing. If you've had a huge expenditure in the last year, they probably will want receipts to see what happened, because you can't give money away. I think that might be in the next slide. So they'll want you're gonna be providing lots of financial information if you have a complicated financial picture. Let's look at, yes, sir.
There's one other question. The joint assets does not include your house.
Right, it does not include your house.
And
One
I know
house.
that one house, right.
And one
So I know one strategy that sometimes people have made is they get a really more expensive house.
Mhm.
They get up to a $700,000 house. So that's protected.
Mm-hmm.
That's not counted
It's
assets.
an interesting idea. So Jerry's saying sometimes people will buy a more expensive house to protect their assets that
Buy
way.
the biggest house you've got and buy the fanciest car you've got. Get that.
Yeah, so let's talk about the spend down, because that's good points.
Those are strategies that people use, right? So
Yeah.
that if their
Yeah.
income is over that, then that doesn't count. Those are not
Yeah.
considered assets.
Now, in the house, after people pass, then there's some issues with the house that we'll talk about. So I do one more question, then we probably should move on just to make sure we finish. So,
Otherwise we'll be here too.
how about, yeah.
When you said that you could call for a resource assessment,
Mm-hmm.
then that's just your stuff,
It's a snapshot of your income and assets at that moment.
and they can do that just to see if you might be in that ALTCS.
Yeah, to tell you how much you would need to, the spouse would need to spend down. No, the person applying would need to spend down in order to become eligible.
But you can't do that until you're applying, correct?
No, you can do it before you're applying. They'll look at the financial picture. So it's a snapshot for you before you're applying, because you know, oh my gosh, we've got so many assets where we wouldn't be eligible at this point. So you can ask for a financial assessment and get that snapshot of the finances and a target spend down amount. So they'll look at all of your income, all of your assets, excuse me, and they'll give you a target.
And we would call that.
Yeah, I think let's look at what, I can't see. There you go, right here. So, yeah, you can call and ask for a resource assessment. Just call that same number. I can't remember, I used to know it by heart, but it's on the first slide, I promise. Okay. All right, so let's go to the next slide and see, because that, yeah, the spend down. So if you have that target and you know that you need to spend down some funds, that money can be spent on anything that's for the care of the person. And really the care of the person is anything that they need. So you can pay off debts, you can pay off your mortgage. Like Jerry said, you could buy a different house. You can make sure that you have a car that is the best car that's going to get you around to those medical appointments for the future. You can fix up the house that you're living in. You can pretty much do anything that you would do in your normal life to spend down the money. The one thing that you cannot do is give the money away. And that's the next slide. So there was, in 2006, the Deficit Reduction Act included this piece about ALTCS, about the Medicaid long-term care program nationwide. And what it said is if you give away, if you give away or transfer property for less than the market value within 60 months, which is 5 years of applying, then there is a penalty. And the penalty means that you will be ineligible for the program for a period of time based on how much money you gave away. And what they do is they look at the total money that was given away. They divide it by $8,000, which is that amount I mentioned earlier that the state considers the average cost of nursing home care. And so if a family gives away $32,000 in the last 5 years, the $32,000 would be divided by $8,000 a month for nursing home cost of care, and the person applying would be ineligible for 4 months.
Oh, months, not years.
Right, so it's not, it kind of makes sense how it works, right? Yeah, it's not forever. If somebody's in the program and they come into money, maybe they have a medical settlement or something, they might become ineligible short-term until that money is spent. It's based on this same math that's here. And a person can appeal for hardship. We know of some cases where people who really are not able to make decisions were financially exploited. And so they gave away money to somebody. And in those cases, and it's not a lot, but right, the Adult Protective Services is involved maybe. And there's an appeal based on hardship saying, this person didn't willingly give money away. We need to make sure that they can not have that be a penalty to their application. This gentleman, and then, yes.
You say giveaway.
Mm-hmm.
What if you loan money to your children and they're paying it back?
I would keep track of it.
I'm sorry?
I would keep track of it. I would write down an agreement. I think it would probably be looked at as a gift, but if the person's paying you back, I don't want to speak to that. What I want to speak to is that any kind of thing that you do informally and with your family that involves a chunk of money, I would keep track of it. Maybe you're paying a family member to help you out. Maybe you're paying your daughter an amount to help you with care. Have a written agreement. I'm paying Elizabeth $25 an hour to assist me.
They're paying me.
Yes, but you're talking about a loan, and that's something I don't want to speak to, but what I do want to say is just have something written, and then you can ask the eligibility worker, but you've got a written agreement between you and your family member. Nothing super formal, just write it down on a piece of paper. I loaned Elizabeth $7,000. She's paying me back $100 a month. This is our agreement. I don't know how they would consider it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and then
You had said on the previous slide about the spend down.
Mm-hmm.
Spend however, as long as it is for the care of the resource person.
Yeah,
So
or the couple.
It has to be spent that way, not just go in and get new draperies.
That's fixing up the house. I don't think that there would be a big problem with that. I'm speculating, but really that's still making sure that the home is going to be comfortable and what good to live in for the applicant's life. So I don't think you'd run into a problem. I think it's really giving money away that you do not want to do. You don't want to give your grandkid your old car for $1. You know, that would be a lovely thing to do, but in this particular situation, I wouldn't advise it. So that's the sort of thing. Yes.
Question I am, like my husband and I, this is the second marriage for us, and we have
Yeah.
his money,
Yeah.
we have my money, and then we have our money. So when they figure out the resources, do they take all of that, or do they figure out our money and his money, or our money and my money, whoever they have?
Yeah, I love your arrangement. They're not going to look at it that way. They're going to look at all your money together. Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's another unfortunate situation with a caregiver and a person who needs assistance, right? Yeah. Yeah, that can have a lot of impact. I understand.
Just think, we in a few months, we used to know.
I hate to think that might be what happens, but I can understand that perspective. Yeah. Yeah.
Try and get along, try and get
Oh, did I get your question? I got everybody in the front with questions? Okay. Let's look at the next slide, see what that has to talk to us about. Okay.
Just a little bit higher.
A little higher? Is this better? Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for letting me know. All right, so VA aid and attendance. It may seem really weird to have something about the VA in the middle of a presentation about the Medicaid ALTCS program, but here's the deal. Aid and attendance is a really cool program for people who served during wartime and their spouses. And it provides a monthly stipend for people to pay for their care. So it can be really helpful for folks. You know, there are medical and financial criteria involved to qualify for aid and attendance, but if a person applies for ALTCS and they could be eligible for aid and attendance, then ALTCS requires them to make that application. And all you would need to do is call that number at the bottom of the screen. The Department of Veterans Services is really helpful in terms of helping people apply for all kinds of veterans programs. But you just need to start that application process. So just want you to know that that comes up for folks. Yes, sir. Oh, was that a question or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there some kind of a definition for wartime?
Oh, yeah. There are dates, official dates that I do not know, but any time that the United States was, I think, like legally at war, a person would need to be serving during those dates. And you don't need to have seen combat. You could be stateside, but you're in the military during that period.
That's a very small window.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is. I didn't qualify. I went into the service, I was 22 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not, and this was in 1957. I did not qualify for anything.
Wow.
That was
Your dad didn't either.
My dad was the same thing.
Interesting.
And you and my dad were in when we were not at war, and it was a really small window. There were very, very few people, and he used to piss my dad off. He was not allowed to join any American Legion because they said you had to serve during
the times of war. Wow, interesting.
But it's a really small.
Okay.
It's a really small window, unfortunately. I guess.
Yeah, but that's interesting to know. Thank you.
But it's a very small time that
yeah.
service was not during the
Okay. Well, it's worth checking out if you're applying.
Some of it now, but when I went into the Army, when I got out, you know, I asked what I qualified for.
Okay.
I went to the VA.
Yeah. Well, it might be.
You were in that window. You were in that window.
Well, it might be interesting to look again, because maybe the dates have adjusted. I don't know, but it is something that definitely, if you're applying for ALTCS, you should apply for aid and attendance if you might be eligible. If you're a veteran, they're going to want you to apply to see if you would be eligible for the program. So, yeah. Oh, yes. Thank you, sir.
I actually just have a quick comment.
Oh, yes.
Because I went to, right before this, there was a presentation about that program.
Oh, good.
And it was, it cut off with Vietnam, so it didn't count, you know, Gulf War. It was World War II, Korea, and then Vietnam. I have the information of the.
Oh, cool.
This
the dates?
guy was a specialist in that program, so if anyone wants his information, I have it here.
I want it.
So, definitely.
Thank you. That's really, yeah, it's an interesting thing, but yeah, there are definitely specialists, and the VA, as you have talked about, is an interesting creature, and the benefits are.
It has changed, I think, 2018.
Okay. Oh, interesting. All right. Yeah.
That's a screwed up portion of our country.
Yeah.
They don't allow. And I did a lot of things in my 3 years that I was in the Army.
Yeah.
And none of it qualifies for anything.
For any of the veterans benefits. I'm sorry about that.
I'm working with the VA right now.
Okay.
And to try and come up with some method.
Mm-hmm.
But
okay.
It ain't working.
I'm really sorry to hear that. Yeah, I know the VA is a very interesting beast, and I am outside of it, and I don't try to speculate about what they're up to over there. So let's go on to the next slide, medical eligibility, because I do want to make sure we get through this. And I do want to say, so Ray and I have done this presentation at 90 minutes for years, and we recently realized that we go over, and I know you guys are usually an hour, but I'm going to try to get all this into 90 minutes. But we do find that we like the questions, but that does take us over. So I'm going to work on that, try to get us done by 5:30. So the medical eligibility is the whole another piece, right? Talked about the financial bit. Now, what does it look like medically and sort of functionally for a person to be eligible for ALTCS? So the medical eligibility screening is called the pre-assessment screening, the PASS. Pre-admission screening. And it's a point-based system, so they have like a huge form, and they have 1 million questions, and each question has a point value. You add up all the points, and at the end there's a number, and a person is eligible or not eligible. Okay? And then the thing to remember for all of this is that this is a system that's set up to provide nursing home level care for people who need that kind of assistance. So even if a person wants to be cared for in their own home, we're looking at that level of care. And when you're ready, let's go to that next slide. So I'm going to talk about what that looks like, but the assessment, the way that it's done is that either a nurse or a social worker will do the assessment. They used to always come to the home to do the assessment. And then COVID happened. And for about 1.5 years, they did all of the screenings on the phone, my team, with the work we did all our screenings also by phone. It's a weird way to do assessments, right? We need to see people. As social workers and nurses, we need to see people face to face to really get a good understanding of what a person needs. So now the assessment can be done on the phone, or it can be done in the home. And I strongly recommend that you request an in-home screening, because that way the person who's doing the eligibility comes and sees the applicant, and they see, oh, you know, they can't get up from the sofa to when they need to go to the bathroom. They need help to do that transfer. Oh, they're actually kind of confused even in their home environment, right? They're seeing all of those important pieces. So face-to-face interview, I strongly recommend it. That assessor is going to look at what they see during the interview, and they're also going to look at the medical records. So they're going to ask for a release of information to get all the pertinent medical records for the applicant. And then what they're going to do is compare the diagnoses, what they see in the case notes, and what they're observing. And they want to connect the challenges to the diagnoses. And I say that to sort of emphasize that there are some scary diagnoses out there. Like for me, Parkinson's is worrisome, right? I have some close friends who have Parkinson's, and we all know that that's a progressive illness. So somebody with Parkinson's can still be going to work and driving their car and doing all the stuff that they used to do. It's more challenging, but they're still out there doing everything. But as the illness progresses, they start to need more help. And so it's not just the diagnosis that makes them eligible for ALTCS, but it's the diagnosis plus the challenges. And when the assessor goes to do a visit, the Parkinson's is the reason for the challenges. So they're making that connection back and forth. They're going to look at what we call the activities of daily living to make that assessment. And those are all of the activities that have to do with caring for your own body. So getting up from a chair, moving from bed to a wheelchair, bathing, grooming, so trimming your nails and brushing your teeth and doing your hair. What else? Mobility, so how a person moves around in their own home. Do they walk independently, or do they need somebody to stand by with them while they're using their walker? Do they need somebody to push the wheelchair, or can they move it all by themselves? So if a person has a mobility aid, like a wheelchair or walker, they could be completely independent with that. They might not need any help once they're in their wheelchair, or they might need to be pushed around the house, or they might need to be pushed around the house in the evenings when they get tired, or in the mornings when their joints are particularly painful. So that's the nuance that the worker is looking at. The assessor also looks at sensory challenges. I might have a vision challenge that I've had my whole life, so I'm really good at getting along without great 100% vision, or I may have lost my vision fairly recently, and that makes it really difficult for me to take care of myself. So they look at that sort of thing. Does a loss of vision or hearing or speech get in the way of somebody's taking care of themselves? And finally, they look at behaviors. Are there behavioral challenges or orientation challenges that make it difficult for somebody to care for themselves? And all of those different pieces they put together in the assessment. There's two diagnoses. It's maybe on another slide, but I'll just say now because I'm thinking about it. Trouble getting to the toilet, so incontinence, and dementia symptoms that cause somebody to be really confused and disoriented about time and person and place. Those are two challenges that score well, right? There's lots of points because those are both challenges that can be actually dangerous for a person, right? If you can't change your incontinence supplies by yourself, you can get skin problems. So those things have more points, but you need a diagnosis in the record. So at home, I've been caring for my dad who's having incontinence, but I haven't really talked it over with the doctor, so it's not in the medical record. I want to make sure the doctor knows about that and has that diagnosis. And the same thing with the dementia diagnosis. I might be helping my mom, and she's starting to show confusion, but unless the doctor has that diagnosis in the chart, then those symptoms aren't gonna count as much. So you wanna make sure you're in communication with the doctor about symptoms and diagnoses. So let's see what the next slide has. So that leads me to this idea that a family member or a loved one, a neighbor, a friend, somebody who cares about the applicant, really it's very, very valuable for them to be involved in this application interview, this PASS assessment. It's really common for people, for all of us, most of us, to want to put our best foot forward when we meet a stranger. So I could be having all kinds of challenges, but when a stranger comes to my house and asks me about them, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to say things are going great, because I've never met this lady before in my life, and I don't want to be vulnerable in front of her. Or I'm somebody who just looks at the positive side of things and doesn't really want to dwell on the negative. So a friend or family member is super important because we observe the person we're caring for, we realize what's going on. We know what happened 3 days ago that the person applying may not want to bring up. It's really important to be involved. And so what I would advise a friend or family member to do is, first of all, try to prepare the applicant. Hey, look, tomorrow, this lady's going to come from ALTCS. She's going to ask a lot of really personal questions. She's going to ask if you have accidents going to the bathroom. I'm going to need to tell her that actually, like, you left the pot on the stove last month and it burned up. I'm going to need to share that information so that she understands how hard this is and we can get a little help. And that works with some people great, just giving them the information. Other people may be in the middle of the interview and then start to get really touchy and grumpy and not want to talk about it. I've been thrown out of somebody's house for asking this sort of questions, right? But I got thrown to the house, but I still wanted the answers, right? So I called the daughter, and the daughter and I talked about what happened and what the person really needed and what she was experiencing. And the past assessor is going to want that from you as loved ones. So follow them to the door, see them out, and make an appointment to talk to them on the telephone. Or I've stood in the driveway and I've got information from family members. So there's lots of ways to do that, and they do want to hear from you. Like I said, the two hardest things to talk about, incontinence and cognitive challenges, are two things that do give points, right? So you want to make sure the assessor knows what's going on and how hard things are. You also want to talk about what the worst day is like. Like, things go up and down, and there's great days and there are hard days. So you want to share the information about the worst day. You may want to make the appointment for the time of day that's difficult. If I have joint pain, mornings may really suck, right? That's a perfect time to have the assessor come so she can see how hard it is. If I have cognitive challenges, I may have sundowning, right? I may have some trouble in the afternoon and the evening. So schedule the appointment for 3:30 or 4 and let the assessor see what happens at the end of the day. They need to see that stuff. Okay, so this is what one of those questions looks like. And it's really simple. I mean, point 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? That's sort of the scale that they're looking at. What they're trying to determine is with any task, this is the bathing question. With bathing, is a person 100% independent? Can they really do that task all by themselves? Or do they need a little bit of supervision? Maybe somebody cueing them and saying, okay, right now, let's make sure the water's the right temperature. Here's the soap. Rub the soap into your hair. So they may need cueing, and cueing counts as assistance. They may need a little bit of supervision, a little bit of hands-on. They may need a moderate amount of that hands-on or cueing assistance. So we want to help people always maintain their independence. So it may very well be that you put the soap in your loved one's hands, and then you tell them to rub their hair, and then you get them a clean washcloth so they can rinse their face. Like you do many of the steps, but you're assisting them. So give all of the detail. It might seem redundant, it might seem like too much, but it really, honestly, is what the assessor needs to hear. They want to hear all that information, because through all that, they're going to pick out the bits that are helpful to them to get to, is this supervision, is it hands-on, or is it total dependence? And I'll tell you, total dependence really is total help. Like, the person needs their legs lifted over the edge of the bathtub into the shower, they need help scooching, they sit there and they really don't participate. Or somebody who needs a bed bath, say, if we're talking about bathing. So somebody who really needs a lot of help. For people applying for ALTCS that I've seen, most of the people that I've worked with are at that hands-on level. And that's sort of what you're looking for several of those activities of daily living. So we talked about bathing, dressing, grooming, eating. And eating is actually getting the food from your plate into your mouth. Unfortunately, it's not cooking. It's not housekeeping. Those are things that people really need help with. But like I said, ALTCS is nursing home level care. And so it's eating, it's getting the food into your mouth. So look for needing assistance with 2, 3, 4, some of them in supervision, some of them in hands-on. And that's when you could start thinking, okay, maybe this is time to talk to the ALTCS assessment people. Does that help give an idea when you start thinking about it? Okay. All right, so that's the medical eligibility and the financial eligibility. Questions about eligibility? I know it's a big thing. So then what happens when yes, sir?
Are there many cases of people lying?
I've had some. I had a guy who said he needed a lot of help, but when I arrived, he was working on his car. So he was in the program, you know, and so there are situations, and sometimes it's that a person needed the help and then they get better, right? And so, but they're still sort of talking about how they used to be, but actually, so there's times when the case manager needs to encourage more independence because the person really can do stuff. I think getting into the program as a case manager, I didn't run into cases of my colleagues where people became eligible and really didn't seem like they should be. So there's good questions. And I've got to say, the eligibility workers are they're not trying to be a barrier to eligibility. They've got to follow the rules. They get audited really closely, really, really closely. There's a really strong culture of trying to have all the scoring be the same. Inter-rater reliability is a big deal. But at the same time, they don't want to be a barrier to a person who needs help getting in. So they will ask questions. They will try to understand what's going on so that they really do have a picture and they understand. That's the opposite of blind, but they will really try.
Are there many applicants who either forget they or the family completely forget people's assets? Their
Completely forget what?
assets.
Assets. Are there situations where people completely forget what their assets are? Yeah, there are, and so those people generally have help with the application process. It can be tricky when somebody has no one. Those are the situations that my team can run into as folks in the community who have absolutely no one and are forgetful. But there's a few ways in the community to help those folks. Yeah, those are hard situations. Yeah. So when a person becomes eligible, there's a few things that happen. During the application process, actually, you'll be asked to choose a plan. And the plan is the agency that provides the case manager who comes out and who contracts with all of the care providers. They contract with the home health agencies, they contract with the home delivered meals, they contract with assisted living homes and adult care homes and nursing homes, memory care centers in the community. So each plan has its own list of contracted providers and its own set of case managers. And a person can choose once a year. There's a period of time when people can change plans if they don't like their plan. From my perspective, having worked in the system, they're pretty similar. Their networks are both very, very wide in the community. They've got good case management team, good leadership. This is the place where I do like to say, though, if you run into a problem with an assessor or with a case manager where you don't understand what they're telling you, or you think their decision doesn't make sense, or you're not hearing back from them. I mean, in rare cases that happens. So it's okay to ask for a supervisor. It's okay to speak with a supervisor to get clarity, to get answers. It's not a punitive thing in these systems. So I just want to encourage you with the application process, or when you have a case manager in the system, know that they have a supervisor who has been in the program for many, many, many years, and this supervises a whole bunch of people, so they see all the weird, difficult things. So the supervisors are a great resource if you should need them. And with the application process, they do really great training, but the frontline workers, some of them have only been with the program a few years. They haven't run into all of the weird things that could happen. So like I said, if your situation is unique and you feel like you don't understand the answer, or you think the person isn't getting you, ask for a supervisor to help you get clarity and sort it out.
There you said the first thing you're going to do is be asked to choose a plan.
Yes.
Are there predefined plans, or is it like an a la carte menu and you pick the things you want, or what?
The plans are the whole thing. So you either choose Banner University Family Care or Mercy Care Plan, and that's your plan for everything for the period of time that you're with the program.
So it's really a provider that you're choosing.
Basically, yeah, the provider, they provide your case management and all of the contracted services, yes. You'll be assigned a case manager from whichever plan you choose. The case manager is going to have that whole past assessment that you did, all that detail, but they're still going to have questions because they haven't met the applicant, they haven't met the family, so they're going to go through that past assessment and ask all those questions again to make sure that they've got it right for their assessment. So I apologize in advance, but a lot of questions about how somebody's functioning and what kind of support they get. Yes?
How many people are in the program right now?
About over 3,000 in Pima County. Don't know the number statewide.
And what's somebody in the program? Are they in the program for the whole year?
They're in the program for as long as they remain eligible. So most people stay in the program forever. Every so often people get better, and that's fantastic, and they don't need the program anymore. Most people are in the program for the rest of their lives, and they just keep getting good care. Yes?
I was just wondering, is there in this packet anything that tells us like the difference or what Banner services are and what Mercy Care services are?
No, but let's go to the next slide, and that might help a little bit. So the one big difference between the two plans, because really I find that they're very similar. Philosophically, you know, different corporations have different philosophies, but really the case management arm is about providing good case management. They want to contract with lots of providers in the community to meet everybody's needs. One of the differences is if your family member or your recipient is already receiving care somewhere, or you know you want them to go to a specific place for care, that's when you want to contact the two plans and find out which plan is contracted with that provider. It might be that both plans are, it might be that one or the other, so you want to make sure if I know that I want my loved one or my loved one is already at the facility down the street, then I want to call Banner and Mercy Care to see if they're contracted. And you can ask the provider, but there's occasional incidents where the providers are confused or they want the contract, but they don't quite have the contract. So you want to talk to the plan directly to find out.
And what happens if, well, like, just you said your wife is at the villas. What if neither one of those, and I mean, I don't know anything about.
Yeah.
So if they're not
contracted,
then what happens?
the person does need to move to a contracted facility. Yeah. The case manager will help you find a contracted facility, but yeah, you do need to be in the network. In Pima County, in every region of the state, there are two plans, and those plans each have extensive networks, but there are facilities that don't contract with them. Yeah.
So is there anything simplified?
Excuse me?
It seems to be, where do I fit? And that is my biggest.
Yeah.
I don't fit at the villas. I go over there to see Hazel. And I don't see where I fit there. And
well,
if I did a lot of legwork, I could probably come up with something that says, okay, Bob, you fit here.
Yeah.
But I don't.
I think the hard part, Bob, is that you're not in ALTCS, you're helping Hazel, and Hazel would be in ALTCS. And the question is sort of, where are you outside of it?
And I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been trying to figure out.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more after, because that is a big question.
Pardon me?
Let's talk a little bit more about your particular situation afterwards, because I think, yeah, your question makes sense. But yeah, I think we need to talk one-on-one about it a little bit more.
I'm spent for the day.
Okay.
I just.
Okay. What I'm going to have you do then is call our helpline, call the PCOA helpline, and say you'd like to talk about ALTCS, and actually ask for Ray, my colleague, on the first slide, and you can talk it over with her or one of her team members.
What will she do for me?
Well, she can talk about your particular situation and your particular questions, and see.
I'm with my dog and my bird.
Yeah.
That's where I live.
Yeah, I think you could talk to somebody specifically about your individual questions about where you fit and where Hazel fits.
You and I can talk to Bob afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sherry, I would really like to.
Because we need to keep going. We need to get.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but
that's fine, and
it's hard. Yeah, I know. It's a lot of information for one day, and not feeling like it's addressing your issues. I would feel really rattled if it were me. So, yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to know, what if you find a facility that is a contracted facility, you move in there, and then they're dropped from the contract?
I would say that does not happen terribly often.
Oh, okay.
It might happen if there's a concern about the care provided at the facility, in which case you wouldn't want to be there anyway. So we do have case managers. The programs have case managers who go in, every 3 months for every resident in the home that they're working with. And so there's state people who go into these homes, and there's ALTCS case managers, and they keep an eye on what's the care like? Is there food in the cupboards? Do they have good care plans? Are the people being cared for properly? And they keep an eye on all that, and they will raise a red flag. And usually it's something fixable. But yeah. All right, what have we got next? Okay, so this is interesting. So for people who already have access, like how do you coordinate your current health plan with ALTCS? When you get into ALTCS, how do you coordinate the two? If a person has access, it's pretty easy because the access plan that they have just switches to the ALTCS plan, either Mercy Care or Mercy Care or Banner. If a person has Medicare, the cool thing is you keep your Medicare. If you have traditional Medicare and a supplement, you just keep that. If you have a Medicare HMO, then you keep that. You may choose to switch and have your Medicare HMO align with Mercy Care or with Banner, but you do not have to. That is up to you. But ALTCS becomes your secondary insurance. So ALTCS pays for copays and deductibles and all that stuff, which is pretty cool. If you have a traditional Medicare and a gap coverage plan, you might consider if those things cover if ALTCS now covers what your Medigap plan covers, you may choose to drop it. I would think carefully about it, but they cover pretty much the same stuff. So you may not need to pay for the Medigap plan anymore. What you want to do is make sure that all your doctors and your pharmacy and everybody knows that you've got the ALTCS coverage, and that way they'll bill for the copays and the deductibles.
And then that way what?
That way they'll bill for the copays and the deductibles. So your Medicare is your primary, and then ALTCS is your secondary. So it's always there doing the copays and deductibles for you. Does that slide say it, or maybe the next one? The other great thing is, no, it's not there. ALTCS also pays for incontinence supplies, which is really great for many families because that can be quite a cost. So that's a nice benefit also. Now, this is a whole hairy area, but I want to just cover it maybe quickly. There's a share of cost for people who live in a facility, either in a nursing home or an adult care home. So the idea is that the provider and the state, or the provider and the plan contract for a certain rate, an amount that the provider is going to be paid for each resident who lives there. And then the resident, the person on ALTCS, pays for part of their care, and the state pays the balance. So that it doesn't matter what you earn and what you earn versus what somebody else earns. The facility gets paid the same for everybody, and you pay your part and the state pays the balance. And each person who's this is for people in placements, not people who are living in their own homes. A person pays for their care, which is their room and their board and all the food, all the lotion, all the toothpaste, everything. And they keep $141.45 in their pocket for going out to lunch or buying a new pair of shoes. So let's go to the next.
That's per month?
Per month, yes. Yeah. So you keep $141 in your pocket to do what you need to do. So the way that it looks is if my income is $1,500 a month, I keep $141.45 and I pay $1,358.55 to the facility each month. And I want to stress, I pay that to the facility. The state does not go into my account and take any money away. I pay my portion, the state pays their portion, but I retain control of my finances, or my family does.
And what was the income limit for that person?
The income limit is the eligibility amount, whatever the eligibility.
I'm sorry?
The income limit would be the eligibility amount? Is that what you're?
No, I'm asking if I were to qualify to go into access, what is the income limit that the eligibility says is I can't earn more than that?
I think it's 2901. Somebody.
So if I got 2901 minus 141, then I'm paying everything minus 141.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But everything is provided.
41.45, and everything else, you don't get anything else. You can only keep 141.45.
Right.
And the state will pay whatever the shortfall, if you qualify for ALTCS, the state will pay for that shortfall. And it's different for everybody.
Sure.
Every bed gets
Yeah.
the same amount of money. It's just everybody is contributing a little different amount of money.
But you wouldn't be able to pay for that bed at all yourself. And so keeping that 140, 145, I'm sorry, you know, I don't make up the number, but that you keep an amount for yourself, but you couldn't pay for the bed at all without the state's help. So that's sort of, once again, where we're expected to pay our portion.
That would easily be like $6,000 if the whole total would be.
You still keep 145, 140, 145.
The share of costs includes things like toothpaste, did you say?
No, the facility pays for the toothpaste and the toilet paper and the lotion and the, but if you prefer a special kind of lotion, then you'd pay for it out of your.
So personal needs, it comes out.
Shirt or pair of shoes.
Yeah.
Manicure or whatever.
Manicure.
Yeah. They may even, I know places that have little nail days, but generally if you want a special manicure.
That's your whiskey budget there.
Oh,
Yeah. It is rough on smokers, I'll tell you. This is, yeah, that number's really hard for smokers, but okay, let's just try to, so really quickly, if there's a spouse, I'm not going to go through the numbers for this because we really are out of time, but just know that if there's a spouse living in the community, once again, they look at the family's income, the spouse keeps money in their pocket, and then money goes for the care for the person. And there's a formula for that. But I don't think we should go into the weeds on that right now. So I think keep going, Jerry, unless everybody wants to sit for another 15 minutes. There's concern often about what happens to a home after the applicant dies. And what I want to be really clear about is if there's a spouse, nothing happens. Nothing happens at all. This is one of those things that I really can't speculate on because the state does not like us to speculate on this. There is legal ruling that the states should look at homes, and sometimes they will do a state recovery. So if the home is sold, then they would claim a portion of that sale based on the amount of money that was spent on the person's care. But it's sometimes, it's not always, and I don't want to speak to details. Yes, ma'am.
And I've had that happen.
You've seen
where
that?
I have listed a property, the surviving adult child has,
Yeah.
signed all the paperwork, but the sale, the contract had to be approved by the courts.
Okay.
And I think it's just to make sure that you're not selling a $500,000 house for $250,000 and the proceeds from the sale ended up going back to the state.
Okay, yeah. And it is based on, it could be all the proceeds, but it could be just a portion. Just depends.
And if the home is held in joint tenancy or those other categories,
It's still,
before qualifying, move it to the name of the deed entirely to the name of the community spouse?
I don't want to speculate on that because there's all that issue about giving away things, right? So giving away the amount of a house would be a lot. What I do want to say though is so first of all, if you're a married person and you're still in the home, nothing happens. But, can you go to the next slide, please? So there is this undue hardship waiver, and this is more, I see this a lot for children who are caring for a family member. If the person resides in the residence, they've been there at the time that the person in the ALTCS dies, that they've lived in that home for at least 12 months and they don't own another home, they can apply for an undue hardship waiver. So I've seen adult children, I'm taking care of my dad, and I moved out of my apartment and I'm here, and now I wouldn't have any other place to live. This is the kind of situation that this helps in. Yeah. And there's more information. There's a publication. You can Google Medicaid estate recovery, and there's a really helpful publication. And there's actually a whole team at ALTCS that work on this, and so if you have a really specific question, you could talk to that team. And then finally, what else do we have? Oh, look, we reached the end. We made it. Just a little bit over. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I do want to just say, you've got Jerry and his program as a resource. You can also, PCOA has a few other resources that could be helpful to you. We have a end-of-life care team that can help with advanced directives, medical advanced directives and things like that. We have a caregiver support team. So if you have questions, if you're a caregiver and you're feeling frustrated, you're trying to work out something, you need some support, please call the caregiver support team. They actually have a support group that meets here in Green Valley on a regular basis. I cannot tell you what day that is offhand, but it's on our website and our helpline. And then also, if you have questions about ALTCS, our rights and benefits team, my colleague Ray, who has a sore throat today, her team is well trained on ALTCS, and they can talk through the difficult things. So if you want to know about your specific situation, or you're applying and you run into a problem, please call us, and you'll get hooked up with her team. It could take a little while to get a call back. They have a lot of callers, but they will get back to you, and they will talk it through with you, and they'll give you the time that it needs to get to an answer for your particular question. So thank you for your patience. This is really complicated stuff. And thank you for those of you, thanks to those of you who are caregivers. It's a tough thing, and it's hard to figure this ALTCS business out, and it's tough to take care of people. Oh, you want this, do you? I will happily give it away.
You're still talking. And you are available for people to, some additional time with you. So
absolutely, I can hang out and chat. Thank you
very much.
Yeah.
I would also just like to make a little political statement. There is before Congress now discussion about cutting Medicaid. And they're talking about it as though the only thing they're going to cut is the graft or the waste or whatever. But it's a very big concern. Any kind of cuts to Medicaid are threatening to this kind of program. And this is one that hits home for a lot of us. Mm-hmm. So you may want to give a call to Siscomani. He's apparently changed some of his ideas about this recently because of some pressure. So do think about that aspect too. That would be an important thing to do. So I'm just, can you say things like that?
Well, I'm just going to say that Mr. Representative Siscomani did sign on to a letter saying that he would support Medicaid and would not cut it. So it's really valuable to call and thank him for that.
Yeah.
Thank him for doing that. Tell him to hold strong and keep supporting Medicaid.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. We'll see you in 4 weeks when we hear a little bit about how to talk to people with dementia. Right?
I missed something someplace.